This is probably the third or fourth time I'm in this temple. Each time I have a new experience. Let me tell you a few interesting stories. The first time I was here, probably 2 years ago, I was with our abbot, Venerable Dr. Dhamma, and he was informed, oh, Vietnamese temple, good, no problem, Mahayana stuff. He was fully confident. And by the time he arrived here, what? This is a Theravada temple? He was totally surprised. And so forget about the Mahayana stuff. Out of memory, he conjured up a Theravada doctrinal sermon, which went on great. And the next time, that was probably 1 year ago, the folks were here, and then the projector wasn't here, and then screen was missing, and then there was no power. And today, here I am. Again, those of you who have seen me before, I was always with the projector and PowerPoint. Why am I not having it? Our projector is out of service. Shortly before I started off, I discovered, and then it was too late to call off this presentation. So here I am. Apology for not being able to present the topic without the visual aid, that is. So probably it won't be as complete as I would like it to be. We'll use the good old-fashioned way. Hopefully I can still deliver the idea. My topic tonight is about ill will. The Pali term would be Vyapada. Yes, and those of you who already have some basic understanding about Buddhism will understand the importance and the value of Vyapada. Because if you're treading the path of Nibbana and you really want to be at least achieve the first fruit, thank you, of treading the path, that would be the stream enterer. And what's the quality, what's the qualification of being such? That would be removing Vyapada. And in addition to that, because most of us here, you're lay people, the greatest benefit you can ever experience, I mean literally and comprehensively, would be the removing of ill will and aversion. It immediately improves your interpersonal relationship. And if you happen to be, say, an organizational leader, you will sense a significant improvement in your organizational efficiency, efficacy, and of course, intimacy. All that. So we can never say enough about the importance of this particular term. Now, I would not be able to give you a Abhidharma type of explication. All I can do is first try to make sense with how you actually sense the existence of ill will in yourself. How would that affect in two dimensions? How would that affect, on the one hand, your meditation, assuming you are a meditation practitioner, and how would that affect your daily life? And hopefully I can offer some useful suggestions. I'll try to limit my presentation as concise as possible. First, as I mentioned, most of you are lay person. So let's talk about the causes of social and family conflict. You may have noticed that in the Buddhist Sutra, it does not address directly the cause of social and family conflict, at least without elaborating it. I don't know if you ever wonder why that Buddha chose to address this particular issue in this way. Because I think most of you have heard about the simile offered by perhaps from Samyutta Nikaya or Madhyamika Nikaya. Anyway, doesn't matter. When you were shot by an arrow, would it be more important for you to pull out the arrow or to ask who did it? And so This simile applies to why I'm referring to this, that in the Buddhist sense, it's more important for you to solve the problem of social or family conflict instead of asking why it occurred, because it's a prioritization. It's more important to solve the problem. And then when you have time, if you're willing and able, yes, let's address the origin. So, the cause of social and family conflict in the Buddhist, from the perspective of Buddhism, would be from craving. Craving in several senses. Sometimes you want something, you can't get it. So the craving is that I want that unacquired thing. That's a kind of craving. It can also be demonstrated, manifested in a different form. Say, I have already possessed this thing. It's tasty. I want more and more and more and more. That's a more common type of craving. Now, the first type that I've just mentioned, that you didn't get something you wanted, it also implies a different type of craving. Say all of you here, you are crossing your legs. Within 30 minutes, many of you would start feeling uncomfortable feeling on your knee. And what's your most direct reaction to that? You want to change, okay? And you think that's natural. But from the Buddhist perspective, that's unnatural, because you are trying to resist the status quo. You try to change it. And what does Buddhism tell you about Nibbana? First, you will have to see things as they are. That means without intervention. So, when you're feeling uncomfortable on your knee, what you should be doing? Observe, noting, without intervening. And yet, that wasn't our reaction. So this kind of subtle resistance, trying to reject, is also another kind of craving. You want to get back to where you feel more comfortable. This is the type of craving that I would like to address more tonight. The Buddha, during a dialogue with one of his disciples, mentioned that, do you monks, remember what I mentioned about the 5 fetters? As all of you know, that the qualification of achieving the first fruit of stream enter would be you have removed or abandoned the 5 fetters. One of them would be ill will or aversion. Okay, it depends on the translation. Now, of course, this particular venerable remembered it well. And then the Buddha deliberately challenged him. Those qualifications, say the first one, the identity view is where you derive the craving, I want more something, or I don't want something. What about somebody challenged you, a Brahmin, saying, what about the babies? They obviously, absolutely do not have the identity view. Not yet do they also have ill will. Now, that's a very challenging question. And after several exchanges of dialogue, the Buddha said, yes, granted, the baby has not yet developed the identity view, but the capability of demonstrating or give rise to aversion is already there. So if I had a PowerPoint, I would have shown you the innocent smile of the baby. How can this baby have ill will? Okay, it's not manifested, but the quality is there. So this tells you how subtle it is. Now, of course, again, as I have mentioned earlier, the important thing is how do we deal with it. So let's forget about that baby thing. The other useful simile following this line of reasoning would be, how difficult can it be? And what is the proper procedure for us to remove or abandon ill will? Here the simile is that, first, the Buddha mentioned that, as we know, the core wood of a big tree would always be durable beautiful, of high value. But then, how can you get access to the core wood? Well, all of you are here. You tell me, how do you get there? You have to cut off the tree. Yes, that's the only way. And so the same thing applies to if you want to really abandon those 5 factors, in particular, since we are addressing ill will tonight, you have to give up several things that give rise to that ill will. That includes jealousy, okay, being stingy, not wanting to give up things, among other things. There are several. So these are subtle, but they are essential. What if you don't? The Buddha asked, well, you always have a choice. Sure, what if you don't? Again, a beautiful simile. The Ganges River in India. You can claim that a strong, healthy man, I can certainly swim over. But what if you are a feeble person? Can you still rely on your arms and legs to swim over the Ganges River? Unlikely. And so the answer is quite clear. You have to strengthen your mental power. Why mental? Because this particular quality of your will is predominantly mental. And when you're meditating, it belongs to, I believe, Vedana, the feeling, meditation on the feeling as feeling. Okay? We don't have time to go into that detail, but at least you know that while choosing a meditation object or your mental object, this belongs to feeling. Okay, it's not physical, although physically you can also get some pleasant feeling, but it's different. So, how this particular quality of ill will is depicted, if you will, in Buddhist sutra. Here I'm drawing on other people's observation, and it's very interesting. If you have the opportunity to go through the Tipitaka, in particular the sutra, notice it always comes with several other mental qualities. And almost always it comes hand in hand with 2 things. First, it comes after sensual pleasures, and it's not coincidence, because this is the condition that most likely gives rise to ill will. As I have mentioned, you want something, you can't get it. You don't want to give up something, and you can't help but to give it up, okay? And it also follows, right after it, the intention of harming. And this is important. Why? You might be thinking, what's the qualitative difference between ill will and harming? Don't they go hand in hand or almost identical? No, they're not. You could have ill will against somebody. Say, I don't like you, but I never showed it. Therefore, no actual harming is done except you are harming your mind quality. But the important thing is that when the ill will already arising, it would make the intention of harming really easy. Okay, so again, I don't have the PowerPoint with me. I describe the role of ill will in controlling your behavior as a midwife to harming. Okay, the quality per se does not automatically lead to harming, but it's a very important assisting factor. So this go back to the beginning of this presentation. I've mentioned that the importance and value cannot be emphasized more. So next step would be, how do you actually identify it? Now, I can ask you, all of you, well, none of you are not newborn babies, okay? So you must have, sometime during your life, experienced the existence of ill will. Now, any volunteer, tell me, how do you know you have ill will existing in your mind? How did you know that? From what sign? Anyone?
Blood pressure.
Not likely. Before that, knowledge was formulated after something. So let's trace back. What else before that? That's already labeled. No. Go back to your direct feeling. This is
Thoughts, your bad thoughts.
the what?
Your bad thoughts.
Now we are getting somewhere. What else? Go back. Go back.
One's ignorance.
A little bit like it. Anyone else?
Eating.
The what?
What?
Eating.
Eating.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. There's a change in your mind quality that you will sense, and it leads you to the evaluation. I am experiencing your will. What is that mind quality change? You know what I'm talking about, right? How do you describe that? What is that feeling?
It's anger and jealousy.
What would jealousy change your mind quality? Describe that.
Discomforting.
You make you feel what?
It makes you angry and sort of make you go physical in a bad way.
There you go. Right? Think back. If you want to describe the subtle transformation, first it irritates you, doesn't it? And this is where you nip the bud upon seeing it. And those of you who have experienced insight meditation, you know what I'm talking about, that whilst without any emotions, you can easily sense the change of your mind quality. But when you are in motion in your daily life, how do you deal with it? So, after the arising of irritation, what follows? Not yet, not yet. Huh? Oh yes, now we are talking. And then, body temperature rising, yes. And interestingly, in the sutta, it gives the simile. It's called heating up, boiling. Precisely the whole process. Yeah, so I'm just breaking down one holistic description into small steps so that you can actually apply it either to your meditation or to your daily life. So it's the irritation and then heating up and then go on and on and on until boiling. As you can imagine, when the water is already boiling, even yourself would get hurt to touch it. You need extra protection. But when you was only smoking, heating up, you can certainly deal with it easily. So it's far more beneficial to clearly and constantly on guard, okay, notice the sign and then deal with it. And that doctrinally would be the most beneficial way for people to do that. All right, now we have identified the cause. Keep in mind why I have to mention this almost repetitiously, because if you cannot identify the object clearly, how can you get rid of it? Right? So assuming now you can clearly identify it, what's the next step? Well, the sutra says, first, you have to be willing to abandon it. So chances are either I intimidate you. Look, if you don't do this, there will be bad result. Or I can encourage you, there are really goodies if you abandon that. So people have different propensities. So certain way would be beneficial to them. Now, the Buddha always choose by offering the rewarding side. So what if you decide to abandon it? For you, calmness. Because you can nip the bud while it was only smoking. You will never get to the stage of boiling. So you have calmness. Being a meditator, you know how important to have a calm mind. Okay? Calmness also gives you the pleasure and the benefit that you, when you're dealing with your, say, occupational affairs or even household chores, you are less likely to make mistakes. You are more orderly, therefore you are more effective. These are the awards. Now, although that picture sounds rosy, the presence of ill will can be developed in 3 different subtle directions. Again, I will not be able to elaborate on each one of them, but I want to give you at least a sense so that you can identify the potential danger of it. First, the first likely line of development of ill will would be against those organic form of life in the intent to kill. Okay, slay. This is obviously against those with lives, organic. The second intention, the second line of development of your will will be against the inorganic stuff, to ruin stuff, destroy, say this house, ruin it, destroy it, okay? But not against people. The third line, even more subtler, would be the intention to come up with a plot, an evil intention. Okay, I just make it mess. Okay, maybe I don't like you, but I wouldn't do anything directly to you. I'll encourage other people to deal with you, or upon seeing your misfortune, I'll rejoice on that. Okay, that kind of evil intention. So it has these 3 possible lines of development, each, of course, with individual identifiable signs. Now, like I said, you all have different propensities, so use your imagination. Okay. Suffice to say that all of them need to be given up. The important thing is, again, all these lines of development do not automatically happen. There was some argument, especially among Western trained psychologists or psychiatrists. They believe more in line with that, say, if I have the intention to grab this cup without touching it, receiving the response from my senses organs, before that happened, I would not change my intention because the intention has not been satisfied. Buddhism disagrees with that. And this particular argument accidentally was reaffirmed by more recent studies. They try to identify, is there a possibility that even if the first intention hasn't been satisfied, you would start changing your mind. And they discovered that within a very short period, say, I have started the intention of touching this cup. Within, let me give you the number, 150 milliseconds. Not even seconds, milliseconds, okay? The intention will remain unchanged. From that point on, keep in mind, 150 milliseconds. From that point on, 5 out of 8 opportunities, you start to change your mind. Okay, so 5 out of 8, that's high possibility. And it's only 150 milliseconds. Statistically, that's almost meaningless. It almost equal to say that you are already changing your mind. So this tells you clearly that there really are very few excuses for you to refusing to change your mind. Okay, so knowing about those propensity, knowing clearly how to identify it, the next for you to do would be get rid of it. All right, next, operational. Meditatively, again, I don't want to take up too much time. We have another speaker here. Meditatively, suffice to say that the 5 hindrances, the ill will among them, all have the antidotes. Suppose you have the so-called unconcentrated mind, okay, which is a very general term, derived from sensual desire. When that happens, it will be useful for you to achieve one pointedness by thinking about the undesirable quality of the body. Okay, that'd be one way to calm your mind. Or say if you have a monkey mind jumping around, then perhaps developing some sense of happiness, okay, would also calm the mind. When it comes to ill will, how do you deal with that? We have many people here. I think most of you, at the beginning of this presentation, we have also practiced metta. Okay, metta would be the right antidote to deal with ill will. And this is not only doctrinally important. Physiologically, we can also prove that. How? Think about your own experience again. When you sense the irritation, it's heating up, until to the moment you really want to hurt somebody, hurt something. At that time, would you have a wide vision or would you have a very narrow vision? Yes. Psychologically and psychiatrically, they have also identified this. When this happened, people would quickly jumping back and back again to the same irritating object. They don't want to give up, but it seems helpless. They really want to get away from this situation, but the mind by that time almost automatically being led back to that irritating object. As I have mentioned earlier, people when they are already in this miserable state, they will say, I can't help myself, okay? But really, way before that point, you have the opportunity to help yourself, okay? So here is the sign, narrow vision, because of the ill will. Now evolve into the narrowed vision and it quickly developing into a habitual state. So what's the antidote? You expand the vision. Metta is precisely expanding your vision. You first create the loving kindness towards somebody that you love, that you care, and then to your co-practitioner, maybe to the teacher here, the venerables, and then even to the sentient beings. When that happens, as you know, consciousness is moment by moment. At one particular moment, there cannot be two mental qualities existing simultaneously. So when you are expanding the vision, there is no possibility for narrow vision ill will to coexist. And if you maintain this state continuously, there you go. You are already abandoned the ill will. Make it a habit then. So what you need to do then is expanding the mind. As long as you can maintaining this state in your daily life, then we would describe the quality of this person as being skillful. And that's what it means in the Buddha Sutta. So to summarize it, first step, clear assessment. Do you have ill will existing in your mind? It may be so subtle that you didn't notice it. Again, go back to meditation. If you try somebody, say, I want to share the metta with this person, that in your understanding, in your perception, I really have no issue with him or her, and yet you find it difficult to share the metta with him or her. That would be the moment for you to think, do you have some very subtle form of ill will against him or her? You may be envy about something. You may be jealous about something in him or her, or you simply do not really want to share the merits with her. So that would be also one good way of identifying the clear assessment of your own mental quality. And then you can come up with a proper resolution of that particular quality. All right, assuming you're still having problem, here is one other useful technique. It's called, again, if I have the PowerPoint with you, I can have the photos to demonstrate. But anyway, it's called intentional relaxation. Those of you who are meditation practitioners know that if you try to achieve something deliberately during meditation, it's not encouraged because it's also a subtle form of craving. But here, the situation is different, okay? Because in the first place, lacking that kind of mental or mind power, you are unable to properly relax your mind to achieve that expanded vision. So you have to consciously, deliberately relax yourself. Now, that of course comes with many techniques. Again, I will not be elaborating on that, but suffice to say, not only in Buddhism, but in other religions and other folk stuff, they have different ways of relaxing the body. That can also be used and applied. Doesn't matter. And to conclude the presentation, one achievement is fine, but that's one-time solution. It doesn't permanently solve the problem. So what we are seeing, what we want to achieve, will be some long-term existence of that metta, or at least the wholesome quality of your mind. Now, fortunately, the Buddha offered one very simple solution. And this is universal among human experiences, not only in Buddhism. It's called keeping good company, having good friends. Almost each time I find it almost mandatory to come back to this particular quality, citing there was one occasion Ananda reported to the Buddha that the good companion constitute half of the meditation. And the Buddha corrected him, Ananda, good company is not half of the clean practice. It's the entirety of your pure practice. So keeping with good friends, then always be able to identify, to clearly assess your mind quality, and then nip the blood upon seeing it. I believe that would be enough as a starter. Of course, there will be more subtle form of your will, but by that time, when you have achieved a really calm enough of mind quality, you will know what to do. Okay. I will conclude my presentation tonight.